Hello, everyone, and welcome to another video here on the Sports Daily Media Network YouTube channel. I'm your host, Sean Vowles. I've got Joe Mead with me. And today, Joe, we got a piece of news that I don't think really anybody expected. Dante Moore announced that he will be returning to Oregon for his senior season. It was pretty consensus that he was going to be the number 2 pick in the NFL draft, which belongs to the New York Jets. But earlier today, we got news that he would be announcing his decision on ESPN, and that to me said there at least a chance that he was going to stay. I don't think you do that if you're just going to declare for the draft. But he has decided to stay at Oregon, which is surprising not only in the fact that was going to be a top 2 pick, but the other part of it, Joe, is they just got a high-profile commitment at quarterback just a couple days ago. Former Nebraska quarterback Dylan Raiola has committed to Dan Lanning in Oregon. Obviously, before we get into that part of it, how shocked were you to see this news?
I was really surprised, Sean. It was kind of a foregone conclusion to me that he would go based on the season he had. I know there was somewhat after the whiteout. October wasn't his best month per se, but I really thought he had a nice November and into the first two games of the college football playoff. I thought, yeah, this is a guy on his way to the NFL. Clearly, we all saw the game last Friday. Not his finest moment, but I thought it was one of those games where I'll give you an example, albeit not even close to the body of work Trevor Lawrence had. Trevor Lawrence's last game at Clemson against Ohio State COVID year wasn't that good. Uh, Andrew Luck had plenty of bad games his 2012 year when he was drafted early. And even if you want to go this far, like there are plenty of quarterbacks who had one good year in college that ended on a stinker. And we could keep naming them. But for this to impact for that to be the sole impact is really hard to believe, to be honest with you, Sean. I think there had to be a lot of other factors at play. You did mention the Dylan Raiola angle. I thought that pretty much sealed Dante Moore's ascension into the NFL, but this is the new age we're in, and we could all speculate. In real estate, we do this thing called sales comparables. We'll compare one property to another that's somewhat similar. We say what it's priced, why ours is better, why ours is worse. So you could only imagine what Dante Moore is getting paid based on some of the other reported quarterbacks that he's objectively better than.
And, we know what he would have been paid if he was taken second in the draft, 5-year contract with 30 something million guaranteed and potentially up to 50. But, yeah, I think there is some part of this that the Jets currently own the second pick. But in terms of college, I thought with how Oregon was going after quarterbacks that they thought that he was going to leave. Um, but I think this immediately, Joe, puts them back to where they were this year. Like they have a couple of defensive players who are leaving. They just got the safety from Minnesota to commit that we talked about in our Minnesota video that will be going out next week. But that like they're gonna be right there again. And I think Moore is a better quarterback than Dylan Raiola, but I don't know if it's like it would have been a huge downgrade for them to just go to Dylan, but at the very minimum, at this point, it looks like Rayola is just going to sit behind Dante Moore for a year. It certainly worked out for Dante. He started at UCLA, didn't go so great. Sat behind Dylan Gabriel last year, and he was a very solid quarterback. Um, Obviously, good enough to get the top pick in the draft. But this is the first of this magnitude, Joe, that I can remember in football of somebody who was this high coming back. Now, the rumored NIL earnings are something in the 5 to 6 million range. That seems to be the going rate for an elite quarterback right now. Um, but the Rayola thing makes this interesting. He did break his fibula in October, beginning of November, something around then.
Yeah, beginning
Um,
November 1st, actually.
well, okay, so that was pretty close. But there's part of this, Joe, that he may not be ready or sharp. He's definitely out for spring practice. Do you think? I think this may be turning into Rayola's situation because I don't think he is signed yet. There are certainly some other teams that are throwing around a lot of money for a quarterback, but how do you think the Rayola situation plays into the second best quarterback in the country coming back for his senior year?
Yeah, it's really difficult, Sean. I think even if you take a step back, let's judge the totality of both these guys' recruitments and careers. Dante Moore originally committed to Oregon. He was long rumored, being an MLK King High School in Detroit. You thought Michigan and even Notre Dame had the inside shot at him. He ends up committing to Oregon, decommits, goes to UCLA, the whole saga you recapped. Dylan Raiola is even stranger, Sean. He starts off, I believe, went to 4 or 5 high schools in his high school career, and then committed to Georgia, committed to Ohio State. Uh, Uncle gets the offensive line job at Nebraska. He gets fired from it this year. Dylan says he's probably not going to enter the portal. Nebraska boosters and media downplayed it, and then all of a sudden he's in the portal. So the reason I recap that shot is just the unpredictability is mainly on Dylan Raiola here. I think Dante Moore, it was down to two choices ultimately, draft or Oregon. Dylan
Yeah.
Raiola, there are so many other things on the table. You do figure a guy like that who wanted to start immediately at Nebraska, hopped in the portal to find a better situation, better talent, better support. And Oregon clearly has that. But now that he's not going to be starting, is it that important to him? Now, I hate to be a doctor and I really hate doing this on this podcast. Is the injury going to take a little longer to recover from? Is it maybe the more mature people at his camp looking at this on a long eagle saying, hey, redshirt this year, you have 2 years of eligibility left. Look what happened. Because the one angle everyone hasn't mentioned yet is Will Stein, the guy who's credited a lot with working with Dante Moore. You got to remember, Kenny Dillingham, Will Stein, those are the ones who get credit for the Bo Nix, Dylan Gabriel, and Dante Moore, the succession of three pretty good quarterbacks they've had lately. He's gone. He's at Kentucky now. Kentucky has their guy. It's actually the old Notre Dame quarterback who was supposed to replace Dylan at Nebraska, and it just throws a whole wrench into things. But that could be a possibility for Dylan Raiola. But Drew Merringer, he was just promoted from being the tight end coach. I'm not saying he can't develop quarterbacks. It's just there's not a long track record of it, right? So is Dylan Raiola really going to rely on him? Maybe. Maybe he'll just trust the process. And here's the worst part for Oregon. Unless they really lock him down, there's no commitment Raiola, even if he sits the bench next year, is going to play for Oregon in 2027. So the whole thing is a calamity in terms of being able to predict a final outcome here.
And quarterback is a position, Joe, that has really been evened out over the course of the portal NIL years, right? Backups are not as good as they used to be because they're starting at a better school. So, is there something to actually having like a really good backup? Maybe. Like, we've seen it a couple times this year. Quarterbacks go down, and then, like, Texas Tech, Baird Morton went down. They lost that game, and it was their only loss all year. Like, I think the level of backups have really decreased. I think not that Oregon wanted to pay significant millions for a backup, but with how quarterbacks are going, like, do you think that there's a way that he's just the backup quarterback next year, mop up duty, doesn't have to burn a year?
It certainly wouldn't be mop-up duty. I think it'll be, and it depends how this redshirt rule
Yeah,
goes. I
because it
know
is
it's floated.
expanded.
It's if it's expanded to 9 games, then yes, that ultimately puts Rayola mop-up duty back on the table. But I doubt Rayola's going there just to do mop-up duty. If he
Well,
is
at this point, yeah.
not even at that point, it's just more it'd have to be an injury thing or a development piece, which let's be honest here, Sean. I don't really see the development angle now that Will Stein's gone, unless he's going to get some quarterback guru to go there. I don't really think that's going to happen. So with the portal, we're shooting this right now on January 14th. The portal closes January 16th. Now, Dylan can enter at the last second and still not choose a school, but it's going to be really tight. Like he's running against the deadline if he is going to want to play somewhere else or be somewhere else in 2026.
And the what was I trying? I'm trying to say, um, like you said, he doesn't have to go to Oregon, but in terms of the injury, this is what I'm gonna say. In terms of the injury, Joe, even if he's good to go August 30th or whatever,
Mhm.
maybe he just doesn't want to start the season before he's going into the NFL draft without a definitely without a spring and maybe with a limited summer too. Like just because he's ready for week one doesn't mean he's ready for week one. Like
Mhm.
maybe if he's not 100% for week one, you say, all right, We'll hold you out for the first month. We'll let you play 2, 3 mop up games against the lower Big Ten teams, and then you'll still have another year, 2 years of eligibility. Not, I don't think he wants it. To be fair, I think he when he entered college, I think he wanted to go to the NFL after 3 years. I don't think he's been bad. He's a good quarterback. I think Nebraska's not done him any favors, but I think the plan may have shifted now to him entering the NFL after year 4. Now, whether he's at Oregon or not doesn't really change that. But I think with everything that we know right now, I think he probably just stays at Oregon. But I wouldn't be surprised to see him go because there's a couple of big time programs, Joe, that do not have a quarterback for next year and have a lot of money to fill that position. So, and one of them is playing in the national championship. So, obviously, we're going to know about that really soon. We're going to post this video right away so this information doesn't get old when he enters the portal and commits to another school tomorrow. But not sure that that's going to happen. So, Joe, before we end it, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I think another thing that one last thing people should consider is this kind of 4-year models happen a lot for quarterbacks. I'm not saying the transfer one, but quarterbacks staying 4 years. Quinn Ewers, I know 2021 was a Mickey Mouse year at Ohio State, but a lot of people thought he would be three and done. He ended up playing 4 seasons of college football. Dante Moore is about to do 4 seasons of college football. Arch Manning, 4 seasons. And Dylan Raiola, if he does do this development path, whether it's through Oregon or another school, he's probably likely to do the 4-year path. Now that you mentioned it, Sean, about him being, you know, entering the 27 NFL draft without a full offseason to prep for his breakout year, for lack of a better term. So I think you're going to see more of this with NIL now. Like it probably opens it up for guys like a Bryce Underwood, guys like even a Julian Sayed, maybe a Ty Simpson returns possible, right? These 5-star QBs where it was just chalked up, they'd be three and done. And I'm going to give you just one blatant example before we log off here, Sean. If NIL was a thing, I bet you Christian Hackenberg does his 4th year at Penn State or does a
Oh,
fourth
yeah.
year somewhere else. Like guys like that, that really, let's face it, were drafted off what they could be versus what they are.
And
I think a lot of those guys would have came back.
and on the other hand, Joe, Trinidad Chambliss from Ole Miss fought for another year. He ended up not getting it, but I think the first round quarterback coming back in Dante Moore's situation here is a little bit rare. But we have seen, guys who are probably going to go in the third, fourth, fifth round go back to school for another million or 2 million at the time. Obviously now it's a little bit more, but at this point, for Raiola, I think next year's quarterback draft is going to be very good now that Dante Moore is putting himself in next year's conversation. You have Arch Manning, you have, a ton of
Sam
other
Levitt,
guys.
perhaps.
So maybe pushing Raiola, I don't want to be in that class. Maybe let's push you back another year and maybe you can be the top quarterback in that one. So, Sayin could go next year too. Not he's another guy, Joe, who he could play a fourth year too.
Yeah.
But I think the not only his NIL, we've seen it in basketball a lot of second round guys going back to school for another year. This is the first, to my knowledge, like definite top pick that is coming back. So thank you everybody for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.